Alright, yeah! Thank God for fantasy football. I'm Buster Brown. The show, well, it's called Redemption Rehab. And if you tuned in today, it's for one reason, and it's to start winning championships in fantasy football. Here we are on our website, fantasyfootballredemptionrehab.com. When you get a chance, you gotta check it out. Today, we're talking about the rookies coming in to the NFL that are going to impact fantasy football this year in the 2022 NFL season and for years to come at wide receiver, running back, tight end, and quarterback. So buckle up, get out your popcorn, and let's head over to the chalkboard
and check out the facts.
Okay, today we're showing you who the rookie tight ends coming into the NFL in the 2022 NFL Draft. Behind me is a website called drafttech.com. When you get a chance, check them out. That's the company I use to rank the tight ends that we want to take a look at today. As you could see here behind me is a guy named Trey Mcbride. He's their top tight end. Over here is their rank. He's their 38th ranked overall player. So he's looking at maybe possibly not going on day one. He's probably going to be an early second round draft choice for a team that wants a really good quality tight end. As you can see below here, Jelani Woods. We're going to take a look at Isaiah Likely, maybe even Greg Dalczyk and Jalen Wiedemeyer. These are all rookies coming into the league in the 2022 NFL season on this year's draft. And, Trey McBride's going to make an impact. Whether he gets drafted or not in any of your redraft leagues depends upon who drafts him in this year's NFL draft. The rest of these guys possibly could be drafted in your redraft leagues. Most likely you're going to pick them up, though, on the waiver wire come week 1 or 2, depending upon how they perform their first couple weeks in the NFL. You Dynasty players, you better pay attention because these are guys that are going to take a couple years to develop. When it comes to rookie tight ends that come from college to the NFL, they usually take a few years to develop before they start to catch stride. And what we're going to do right now is, before we get into these guys, we're going to take a look at the tight ends that were coming into the league, and we're going to look at them on Draft Tech and how they had them ranked. So let's go back and look at last year and the year before so we can give you some perspective as to how these guys might fare that we're going to look at today. Okay, here we are taking a look at some of the tight ends that came into the league over the last 2 years. On the right side of your screen is the tight ends that came into the league in 2021, and the rankings that Draft Tech had them starting at the top with Kyle Pitts. And on the left side of your screen over here, starting with Hunter Bryant, would be the 2020 guys that Draft Tech ranked coming into the NFL draft. These are their final rankings prior to the NFL draft. So let's take a look at this year over here, last year, 2021. We had our gold standard tight end, Kyle Pitts. As you can see here, they had him ranked 5th overall right here. Very few tight ends get ranked this high coming out of college into the NFL, because Draft Tech and most people know that have been doing fantasy football for a long time know that tight ends usually take 2 and 3 years to develop. And what I mean by that is over the last 21 years before Kyle Pitts came in the league, only 5 tight ends, 5 finished in the top 10 in scoring among just tight ends in fantasy football. So very few did it. Rob Gronkowski did it. John Carlson in Seattle managed to get in the top 10. Some other guys, Jeremy Shockey managed to do it. So did Evan Ingram. And there was one other guy out of Miami, Florida. I can't think of his name, but he managed to get in the top 10 in scoring in fantasy football over the last 22 years. The other guy to do it, number 6, was this guy, Kyle Pitts, out of Florida. We told you last year he was the only tight end that we would even consider drafting in our redraft leagues, and you should put a high priority on him in your dynasty leagues, and everybody did. And you know what? He finished 6th in fantasy football among tight ends. There were 5 tight ends that actually scored more points than him, but for a rookie, he did pretty good. So we're going to show you what he did. His last year in college wasn't that spectacular. His last year was, but overall in college, he only played in like 24 games where he had 100 receptions. We're talking about Kyle Pitts here, and he managed to only score, I think it was 18 touchdowns. He had about 1,500 yards total in his career, with about, like I said, 18 touchdowns in his whole career. But he's still our gold standard. We're going to compare everybody we talked to today to him and see how they stack up. Kyle Pitts being 6'5", 239 pounds out of Florida. The other guy that we want you to consider drafting this year in your redraft leagues is Pat Fairmouth out of Penn State. He plays 6'5", 250. He played for the Pittsburgh Steelers last year. This kid's a player, man. He can block. He's going to be a really big-time player. Unfortunately, he's got the same problem Kyle Pitts does this year. They got not very good quarterbacks. We're not sure who's going to be the quarterback in Pittsburgh in April. They signed some people, and they're going to bring back their old guys. But Ben Roethlisberger's gone, and their offensive line at Pittsburgh was not very good. So they're going to improve their offensive line, and they're going to improve their quarterback play, hopefully. And Pat Fairmouth is a guy you're going to want to take as a top probably 10 tight end, maybe top 11, somewhere in there. He finished top 13 in fantasy scoring last year. Kyle Pitts, like I said, you're going to have to take early in your drafts, probably in the first 3 or 4 rounds, because he'll be gone. Even though he has a weak quarterback, he's still going to get the ball, because who else are they going to throw the ball to? And the other guy I want to mention that you want to consider taking is this guy here, Brevin Jordan, in your redraft leagues. He's already gone in your dynasty leagues probably. But down there, he came on at the end of the year, and I don't know if I would draft him, maybe at the later part of a draft, but I definitely pick him up on the waiver wire after he shows him doing something during the season. And the other guy, my sleeper guy out of the 2021 draft that you want to keep an eye on, especially in the preseason and that first week of the NFL season, is Tommy Tremble down here out of Notre Dame. He plays for the Carolina Panthers. Came on a little bit last year. Poor quarterback play down there didn't help him, but if they improve their quarterback play, improve their offensive line, get Christian McCaffrey back, hey, this guy may make some noise. So keep an eye. I wouldn't draft him in your redraft leagues, but I'd probably pick him up on your waiver wire if you start to notice he's doing well. Let's go over here and take a look at some of these guys that were drafted 3 years ago. Like I said, it takes a while for tight ends to come on. They have to learn how to block in the NFL. They have to learn the route tree for a tight end in the NFL. And the athletes in the NFL are way better than they saw in college. So it's a difficult thing for them to do. How many players in the NFL do well at tight end? If you've been doing fantasy football long enough, that's a tough position to nail every year. So when you look at these guys at Draft Tech rank, Hunter Bryant has done nothing. He plays for Detroit. You're not drafting him. Cole Kmet, worth maybe drafting late in the draft. He might come on. He was playing with Jimmy Graham last year. I don't know if Jimmy Graham's going to be on the roster this year, but I think Cole Kmet might be worth watching in the preseason and drafting in your redraft leagues. The other guy I really like on this list down here is Albert O. We called him 2 years ago. We told you we really liked him. He's the starting tight end in Denver now that Russell Wilson's there, and Noah Fant, which was the starting tight end, got traded to Seattle. We like Noah Fant too in Seattle, but Albert O, we called him, and his last name is Okwuegbunam. And he's a starting tight end for Denver, and we really like him this year, so consider drafting him in all your redraft leagues later in your draft. And sleepers that you should keep an eye on this list are definitely Harrison Bryant for Cleveland. He seemed in his first 2 years he was catching 3 or 4 touchdowns a year. He might break out. He's playing behind David Njoku, who we really like out of Cleveland. Once they got the new quarterback over there in Cleveland. got rid of Baker Mayfield, you might see some of these guys in Cleveland like Harrison Bryant and David Njoku catch some more balls. You can see Chase Claypool here. You can see he's not a tight end. He coming out of college, he might have been projected to be a tight end / wide receiver. The other guys you want to keep an eye on are definitely Adam Troutman down there in New Orleans. Jameis Winston's the quarterback. They've had issues with quarterback, and even though I thought Troutman might break out last year, he really did not, but he might. But this kid's a pretty good player. He can block and he can catch and he can run, so wouldn't surprise me if he was on the field like every play. So, and they like to throw the ball to the tight end down there in New Orleans. So keep these guys in mind. We'll talk about them as we go over the rookies coming into the league. So let's head back over to Draft Tech and take a look at some of the players that are coming into the league in the 2022 NFL season at tight end. Okay, here we are back on Draft Tech. We're looking at the ranks of the tight ends coming into this year's 2022 NFL Draft on DraftTech.com. And the player that everybody's going to want to see where he goes is this guy right here, Trey Mcbride out of Colorado State. You can see 6'3", 260 senior. This kid was really good. Draft Tech has him ranked number 38, so he's going to go early in that second round of the NFL Draft. Let's take a look at some of his statistics. Trey Mcbride was a 4-year player. He was a first-team unanimous All-American. That's huge. I mean, that means everybody voted for him to be the best tight end. He was the Mackey Award winner for the best tight end in college. He did play 40 games over the 4 years. The 2020 season was a shortened season, probably because of COVID. But his senior season, he had 90 receptions for 1,121 yards, but he only scored 1 TD. That's hard to believe he had 1 TD with all those receptions, but he did. His career stats are 164 receptions with 2,100 yards and a total of 10 TDs. Now, when you compare this guy to Kyle Pitts, this guy here put those numbers up in 40 games, where Kyle Pitts scored 18 touchdowns in 24 games. So I wouldn't put him in that category with Kyle Pitts. But I do like Trey McBride. He's definitely going in the second round. Keep an eye on. If he goes to a team like the Los Angeles Chargers, that's huge because they like to throw the ball to the tight end. Then again, if he goes to a team that doesn't like to throw the ball to the tight end, then his draft stock's going to fall. But he's definitely getting drafted on all your dynasty leagues, and he's totally going to get drafted, depending upon who drafts him, in all your redraft leagues. Another guy that we really like, and as you can see here, Jelani Woods out of Virginia, 6'7", 275-pound redshirt junior. So he played 4 years in college. Look at this number here. Draft Tech has him ranked 71, but he's moved up 60 spots. 60. So he was way down here in the 130s. And he moved way up because of his athleticism, and he's big. So Jelani Woods played at Oklahoma State for a couple years, and then before he transferred to Virginia. And the reason he transferred is probably wasn't catching any balls over at Oklahoma State. They taught him how to block for sure, because you play at that team, you have to learn how to block. So he can block and he can catch passes, because when he went to Virginia, his career took off. Let's take a look at some of his stats. Jelani Woods' career, he had 959 yards, 75 receptions with 12 TDs. Most of that came when he played for Virginia, and he only played in 33 games his whole career. So we want you to keep an eye on Jelani Woods. We'll see where he goes. I think he's going to be more of a touchdown-dependent kind of player. I would not draft him in any redraft leagues. Dynasty leagues, you might be looking at taking him later in a draft, but we'll see how it pans out from him after we find out who drafts him in April. Let's take a look down these lists. I've checked out some of these guys. I wasn't as impressed with Cade Otton or Charlie Kohler as Draft Tech was, but I was impressed with Isaiah Likely out of Coastal Carolina. 6'3", 245 pounds. Look at this. He moved up 30 spots, so he was way down here also a few weeks ago. But Isaiah Likely is athletic, played at a conference where it wasn't big-time college, but he dominated it. He dominated it. He had a great Senior Bowl type stuff. He had a great pro day at the combine. He looked athletic. So people like him. So we're going to keep an eye on him. He's not going to be drafted in any of your redraft leagues, but he's probably going to be drafted in all the dynasty leagues. Let's take a look at some of his numbers. Isaiah Likely played for Coastal Carolina. 6'3" is how tall he is. He played in 42 games. He had 133 receptions, that's a lot, for 2,050 yards and 20 TDs. In his senior season alone, last year, he had 912 yards, 12 TDs. So that's pretty good. I mean, he's 245 pounds, so he's could stand to put on some weight. We'll see if he can block in the NFL. That would be the thing. Can he block? I mean, some of the guys he's going to go up against are going to be very, very athletic, and that may set him apart, or it may kill his career. We'll see. There's a couple guys I want to mention also, real deep sleepers. You're not drafting them in your redraft leagues, but you might want to consider throwing them on at the end of your dynasty league drafts for your rookies, and that's these two guys down here, Greg Dalczyk out of UCLA, 6'4", 238, and Jalen Wiedemeyer from Texas A&M, 6'5", 260. As you can see, Wiedemeyer fell 75, so he was way up here just a few weeks ago, and Greg Dalczyk moved up a few spots. I really like him. He's like almost like a wide receiver over there at UCLA. Let's take a look at some of his stats real quick. Greg Dalczyk only played 4 years. He had 1,353 yards with 77 receptions and 11 TDs over the course of his 4 years out there in UCLA, but he was a walk-on. So he didn't even get a scholarship. He came on and said, I can win this job, and he did. So he is pretty good, and I'm surprised he's not higher, but he's definitely getting drafted late in the NFL draft, and he's probably going to get drafted in most dynasty leagues, but he's a waiver wire pickup on your redraft leagues. So is Jalen Wiedemeyer down here from Texas A&M. His big thing down there at Texas A&M, if you can't block, you probably can't play tight end, so he could probably block really well. Probably didn't do well at the combine or his pro day or something made him fall 75 spots right here. But he is 6'5", 260 junior. Let's take a look at some of his stats real quick. Jalen Wiedemeyer played 3 years, 34 games at Texas A&M. He had 118 receptions for 1,468 yards, 16 TDs, and he was a Mackey Award finalist. So people did know about him. People liked him in college because he probably is, 6'5", 260. He probably can block, catch the ball, run well. Some reason he's fallen. I'm not sure why, but he will be drafted in the NFL. He's not going to be drafted in any of your redraft leagues, and he should be drafted in all your dynasty leagues. Well, there you have it. Those are your tight ends that you need to keep an eye on in the 2022 NFL Draft. See where they go, see how they do in the preseason of the NFL. And I doubt any of these guys, besides this guy up here, maybe Trey Mcbride, really has an opportunity to catch that 50-60 ball type thing, depending upon who drafts him. Hopefully someone like Cincinnati in the second round or Los Angeles Chargers get him, and this guy's gonna fly up draft boards if that happens, because they pass the ball to the tight ends, and the tight ends are a big part of their game plan. So there you have it on the rookie tight ends coming into the NFL in the 2022 NFL season. I'm Buster Brown. The show, it's called Redemption Rehab. Good luck.